Hello and welcome to Dungeons & Drama Nerds. My name is Nick Orvis, and today I'll be joined by the cast of our Bluebeard Bride one-shot, including our Groundskeeper, Meaks. We're gathered here to talk about our experience of this delightfully creepy feminine horror game. Let's go around and share names, pronouns if you'd like, and roles in the campaign, starting with Meaks.
Yep. I'm Meaks. My pronouns are she and they, and I was the groundskeeper for Bluebeard's Bride.
And Kory?
Hello, I'm Kory, and I was the witch. Let's go to the witch, let's go get away. Anyhow, I go by she, her. Goodbye!
Gina?
Hey, I'm Gina, and I played the Virgin in Bluebeard's Bride.
Haleh?
I'm Haleh, and I played the Animus in Bluebeard's Bride.
And Ella?
Hi, I'm Ella. My pronouns are they, them, and I was your safety and intimacy coordinator. Consultant? What did we decide?
I don't remember. Whichever is good. You both consulted and coordinated, for which we're extremely grateful.
An independent contractor, if you will.
Amazing.
Last but not least, I do want to name that Romana Isabella played the mother. They weren't able to be here for this recording, but we will be working their answers into the episode during post. To kick things off, I just wanted to check my own memory. Had anyone here played Bluebeard's Bride before our recording?
No.
Seeing shaking heads. Yeah, so great. So for everybody, really, since you were coming to this game new, I was curious, was there anything about it that you especially loved? And was there anything that kind of caught you off guard in this particular game?
Yeah, I can go. Yes to everything. So this was my first D&D experience ever. Or game. I don't even know if that's the correct terminology. But this was my first game that I've played, roleplay game. And it was, I was so grateful for how it was so easy to go along for the ride of it. And as a huge horror fan, I was just loved being able to step into this really perverse and horror-ridden world. And I was just surprised at how much fun I had and how natural it felt. I loved every inch of it. I want to play it again.
For me, like a lot of different gameplay, especially just in like an RPG kind of setting, you're always your own independent character. So it was nice to have kind of a hive mind. I feel like it created a lot more dialogue. I know I was kind of a troll at sometimes to everybody, but also like you fostered that environment. But it was like, anyhow, we're not the witch anymore. Anyhow, it was real fun to just be able to like stay on the same narrative for everyone instead of kind of like, okay, now you wait and this is how your characters can do it. It saves a lot of transition time because we were all the same entity. I think that one made the gameplay a lot more faster and interactive. And it also just like, you had to take more people into consideration instead of just like, oh, there's a goblin, I'm gonna kill it.
I'll say, I think I've become very accustomed with like the horror game genre of like being in a room where everybody is like trying to make everybody else uncomfortable and it becomes like a bit cringe. It becomes a bit like, ooh, are we actually having fun or are we just like trying to top one another, making everyone else feel bad? And this like stayed feeling good while being very, very scary, and that was delightfully surprising for me.
I actually was curious whether that was to kind of see how you all felt about that, because Bluebeard's Bride can be really, really dark. I don't know how many of you read like the full rule book, but even just some of their examples of play are really grim. And I feel like we did go to some dark places, but in a very like caring and negotiated way. So I was just curious how everybody felt about that, about where we did go.
I wanted more. Give me more. Like the original Saw movie, good. Okay, some of the sequels didn't make sense, but like I still wanted it. I was still ready for it. Give me the goods.
Yeah, well, I think I'm pretty sure that all of us who are playing are in some way like actively working in horror, right? Or like we like horror is a genre that I think we all really are ready drawn to. So maybe that just had something to do with it. Like we already sort of approached the genre from our own experiences of like trying to make it ourselves or trying to sort of build a different version of horror that is sort of more inclusive or equitable, caring, sort of compassionate and aware. I guess it felt very natural for all of us to sort of do that. So I think maybe I just was thinking that since we already pre-worked in it, I wonder if it would be very different if you only had like horror movie fans or you only had people who like read a lot of Stephen King novels or I don't know. I just wonder if the dynamic was sort of organically there with us because that's sort of what we easily do already.
I'm seeing a lot of vigorous nodding.
Yeah. And I feel like we did so much pre-work to get on the same page and to like meet each other so that it wasn't just a group of people gathering together and diving into the game, which I think was really useful. I didn't know anybody before the game, so I really appreciated being able to be like, who are you? But during the gameplay, there was one point where I was like, is there a ghost behind me? I just felt like there was like a ghost behind me. So I definitely like got creeped out during it in a way that's fun and delightful as opposed to anything that's feels bad. And again, like just I feel like there was so much care that went into it from Ella and Meaks, and just setting up all those guidelines made it so that like I felt like, oh, we can dive into this and be safe and also scared, which is great. Being scared is fun, I think.
There's an adrenaline rush that goes into being scared. It's like that little like, oh, okay, I'm okay. Like everything's good. You get those little goose pimples or goosebumps.
And if I can like geek out for just a second, one of the reasons I got super into horror is because like there's all this research about how like horror entertainment can sort of help complete adrenaline cycles in the same way exercising can help complete adrenaline cycles. So if you're someone like me who lives with chronic anxiety, sometimes like just peaking that scare meter really like helps a person come back down, and that's something that I love about this, and especially this game, because it is really specifically about like the horror of like this gendered experience in a way that I was able to go back to my life and like view those horrors in real time and be like, oh, okay, cool.
I especially loved how the game structure really maintains this feeling of powerlessness. I mean, I really often look to tabletop role-playing games to get this like casual exercise in cause and effect results. Like I have a goal, and whether luck is on my side or not, the dice are on my side or not, I can possibly achieve it. You know, like if I know my stats well, if I think creatively, the only like different in results is the degree of success or failure. But in Bluebeard's Bride, getting results is absolutely not the goal. We know how the story is going to end. We know what's on the other side of the last door. We know what our fate is. And the like authentic pleasure of the game is 100% pure exploration and sensual experience. And I really loved having an opportunity to just focus on that.
Actually, I was wondering, Ella and Meaks, I was wondering if you two want to talk a little bit about kind of the safety tools that we brought to the game and kind of how you worked together and separately to kind of ensure that everybody stayed safe with these maybe very heavy topics.
No, Meeks, you go ahead.
I mean, I feel like I was just sort of building off what Ella brought in. When I've run this game before, and with a group that I knew, we did a lot of I think like lines and veil stuff because we knew each other pretty well. And so with this game, I also played like a an actual play version with Magpie and watched some of the tools that GM brought in, and they were amazing. But they brought in like not only lines and veils, but also like what do you wish for the game to be, which helped like I think really contextualize the game for me as coming in as a groundkeeper for a second time, just trying to be like, okay, what do we want the game to be, so that we're not just talking about all of the things that could go wrong. We're also talking about all of the things that we actually want to see in the game. And so while, lines and veils are super important and like can really help you contextualize all of that stuff, I thought having wishes in there as well, narrative wishes, which ended up being, like zombie lesbians, like, great, we can make zombie lesbians, no problem. And like, like that ends up making sure that even if it is scary, it's also like, yeah, but we knew this was possibly going to come. We didn't know how it was going to come, but it's going to come this way with a zombie lesbian that's trying to eat your thighs. I don't know, for fun.
Speaking on a lot of anxiety that's, part of our everyday existence on this planet. For me, it's like, I actually love horror, but I'm also terrified of it. Like, I used to watch a lot of horror in theater just because I was specializing in special effects makeup, but I am the biggest scaredy cat. Like, I will cry. I still can't watch The Ring. It's been decades. Still can't watch it. I am too scared. So I like having gameplay. I like I play Resident Evil. I love the jump scare stuff, but it's again, like I'm in control and it helps me kind of normalize the fact that like, okay, these are things that are happening. Like there may not be zombies on the planet, but there are scary people. And like, I have to remember that I'm still in control of me. And that was a big, thing that I was really looking forward to in this mindset of just like, okay, I know that I can still have control over my brain and how I choose to react versus like everything is out of control. All these things are happening. I don't know what to do. So it was like actually very therapeutic for anxiety.
It was super helpful to, I feel like I went down this research rabbit hole of like, okay, there's this thing that happens sometimes when you're in like an intimacy or safety role where you're not sure if you're going to like walk into a set or walk into a rehearsal room and like it's all going to be on you to keep everyone safe. And so I find that I tend to get stressed about that of like, okay, is this like going to be a room of people who are like, we're just going to go at full speed and like this intimacy person's going to tell us to stop. And so I went down like my research spiral of like, I have to find all the tools. And then I talked to Meaks and Meaks was like, yeah, these are the tools I'm planning on using. And I was like, oh my gosh, amazing. Thank you. And then I got in the room with everyone else and everyone had this mutual investment in safety and in like having a really good time and a really good careful time. And it was just like, oh, my little heart burst. And so that was a part of it. And like just the fact that all these mechanics already exist, like the X card and like being able to throw those up like in the chat and with our hands and audibly if we wanted. We had a lot of different means of using these tools and checking in and keeping it safe in the moment.
I will say it was extremely heartwarming, even just for me on the outside, from our starting in our session 0 and then throughout the game. You all took such good care of each other. It was really wonderful to watch and really like inspiring, because I think these games can be challenging sometimes. We interviewed one of the designers of this game for the podcast, and when we were talking with her, I told her, when I first read this game, I was like, I don't know that I would personally like ever want to play this, but I'm really in awe of what it is and like of its vision. And it was really inspiring to see people take such good care of each other in engaging with this really like complicated work of art.
I know that there are a lot of people out there who are like, and theater should be challenging, and they tend to say that in a way that disregards people's safety. And I'll also say that, like, looking at the history of the horror genre, like, it is supposed to be challenging. It's supposed to take something that comforts us or, like, lies underneath the surface and put a big old spotlight on it and be like, hey, this actually isn't safe. This actually can be scary. And it was fun to get uncomfortable with you all.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great reflection on what horror can do. I think especially this feminine horror, the designer Strix Beltrán talked about, one of the exciting things about feminine horror being that it's so much about agency and what you kind of are and aren't allowed to do. Which kind of leads me to one of my other more gamey questions. But I was curious for the players. I'm perpetually fascinated by this mechanic of the ring that you passed around to each other, which basically lets you control the bride's. It's not quite saying that like it controls the bride's body, but that's the one that gives you access to the moves like leave the room or try to declare that you know what's happened in the room. I'm forgetting what the name of that move is. But I was curious how you all felt about that. How did it feel to be in control when you had it, and how did it feel to like watch other people make decisions with it? It's a kind of unique mechanic in game design, I feel like.
This is maybe because of the way that I was playing the mother, but I legitimately felt like Gollum with that thing, and I hated not having it. And when I had it, I like really wanted to use its power to like its limit. I really became like an intense bear mom, 100%.
I really liked it. I only played D&D 5e, so my experience of RPGs is also like what I appreciated about it was the way to move. Things had to move forward. We could have stayed there, either like anxious about horrors or discussing what maybe could happen or what. Like they're unlike D&D where it's sort of like the enemy is upon you or whatever, and like you're gonna die whether you have to do something about it. It sort of kept it contained into like it's sort of the thing that makes this game pretty genius. Like it keeps it contained inside the single human's body. Like it's but it constrains the choices and the way that like things in the real world of the game progress in such a way that they do have to move forward. I think I wish there were like two other moves, like I feel like I wanted like one or two more like angles to sort of figure out what was happening inside the room, because the rooms themselves are so interesting. And like, I'm sure that Meaks put like hours of thought into like how these things like, but like maybe this game should just be 2 sessions, maybe it's like not a one shot or something. Just like I just felt the ring was like completely necessary and it was awesome, but just the moves themselves at some point became a little constraining in the sense of like, I'd like to have a way to figure out something else, but that's fine. That's a little quibble.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's the same thing. Like you get an idea. It's the same thing with any gameplay where you have to take turns and you can't just all like go in at your own volition. And it would just be like, I know, especially for you, Gina and Haleh, like I bashed heads with you several times. And it's like, I want to do some nasty stuff. Come on. And it's just like, why? It felt like we had teams
that felt really real to like the internal, like that was the conflict, right? Yeah. That's the whole point of like what we're trying to figure out as different people. So you nailed 100%.
It. Like organically it made sense, but as a player it was just like, I want to do the thing. Let me do the thing, damn it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It definitely added to that hive mindedness, which was hard at first to conceptually wrap my mind around. I was like, what do you mean we're all the same person? It doesn't make any sense. But then, of course, it made complete sense. But it's like that thing of like, I want to... Either when I wanted to do something and I wanted the ring to like be able to do that, but also times when I was given past the ring and I was like, don't do that. I don't want to be in charge of this moment. Are you kidding me? I don't want that at all. So it was just really interesting and fascinating, though I do wish just in general that there was more moves that we could make, and that it like Meaks did such an incredible job with those rooms. And I don't know. I also wanted to I was like, isn't this a mansion? Can't we go into 10 rooms? Like more rooms.
More rooms. I want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of that definitely constrained by like the physical reality of us recording in a set amount of time and so on. But I actually did want to ask, Gina, you mentioned being past the ring and being like, oh no, I don't want this right now, which I find fascinating. Did other people have that feeling too, or did you? I guess I'm also curious. There was a moment in the game, one of my favorite moments, where somebody passed Kory the ring, the witch, and Kory was like, "You all keep calling me in to fix the messes that you've made," which felt like very, I was like, oh, that feels so par for the witch playbook of all of these, kind of feminine archetypes or feminine tropes or whatever you want to call them. This feels so apt. But I was curious, did you feel like you were evolving a method around who you passed the ring to, or were there other people who were like, oh, this ring has been passed to me and I absolutely don't want it? Or how did that feel?
Everybody else go. You know what I'm going to say.
I think there was some strategy. At this, like, it was sort of, some of it was spur of the moment. It was sort of like, I don't want this anymore either, or you had to pass the ring. But I think I put a little bit of like, oh, if, the virgin might be the person to sort of thwart this particular horror or something like that,
I just often, as the virgin, didn't want the ring because I didn't want to do the nasty things. But of course, Gina wanted to. But also, it was like, I don't want this. I can't do this. Okay, I guess I will. That's my gameplay, like me, Gina versus the virgin.
As someone who very much never really got the ring organically and only had it passed, one, like, going back on the anxiety thing, it was nice to be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to take control and say whatever I can, because this is a fictional environment and I can actually do whatever the frickle frack I want, because, when shit hits the fan in real life, you're like, oh, panic, because, like, consequences. But here it's like, oh, no, spooky, fake ghost. Oh, you want to fight? So there was a little bit more freedom to actually act on natural impulses and also just be like, I do what I want, and call out these toxic behaviors, these crazy demons in front of us. It was really, really fun, but at the same time, I was like, gosh darn it, y'all. I love you all so much. Dang nabbit. I gotta clean up all your messes, and we're gonna call all these behaviors out, and we're gonna talk about it later in our headspace. But like,
Meaks, what was that like for you watching the shift of power?
It was really enjoyable. I mean, I just keep remembering, like, every single time it was passed to Gina, I was like, well, this is going to be unfortunate because the virgin's going to have to make a decision, and the virgin doesn't want to make a decision. So, like, I just remember, like, several times where it was like, and like, where like something sexual was happening, and the virgin was like, I don't know what that means. And I was like, as the groundskeeper, I'm trying to be very, like, really careful about how I'm saying this, because I also, there's a certain pervy element of being the groundskeeper that I don't want to, like, necessarily lean into all the time. But there's definitely times when the virgin was like, oh, what do you mean by that? And I was like, obviously what she means by this is this. And so it was always that thing of, like, it was interesting who could make a decision and who couldn't, I guess is the other way to put that. Like, because to me, the ring moves seem to be the place of most action. Like, you can do some actions as a maiden move, but those actions are much more like inquisitive and just like trying to understand your world, versus the ring moves, which always felt to me like you were actually being an active force within your story. And the people who really resisted doing that, it was always interesting. And the people who were like, yes, I need it, like the witch, I need to make the active decision because clearly I'm the active part of this personality and everybody else is very passive. Like, it was really interesting. But I also felt the same way from the Animus. The Animus always wanted to make a decision and almost always got the ring and then passed it within a few minutes, versus the virgin who would get the ring and, like, hold on to it for several minutes, right? Like, that was just the difference of how those power dynamics played out. Like, the Animus was always like, no, here we're going to do, here's our next move, we got it, action oriented, here we go. But then that was over. So I enjoyed watching that power play.
Yeah, and in some ways, because so many of the moves are like, do this thing and then pass the ring, the more action-oriented you are, the less time you spend with it, just because so many of them are like, when you take action, you have to give it up immediately. Yeah.
To be fair, Ro and I we're also in another campaign currently, and we're very much just the Leroy Jenkins of gameplay, if you will. So that's just playing to our strengths.
I want to ask all of you, because I feel like you all contributed so much to the unfolding of this narrative. Were there any twists or moments in the game that you really like did not see coming, or that really like threw you for a loop in, I assume, a good way, but it doesn't have to be? And I include Meaks in that because I feel like as somebody who often is a groundskeeper GM type in my own games, I'm perpetually like flustered and thrown off by what my players choose to do.
The one that I remember the most right now is, and I can't remember who did it, but whoever decided to flush the soap down the toilet.
That was me.
It was Haleh. It was Haleh. It was a great move. But I just remember like you asking if there was a toilet in the room, and I was like, yes, I guess there can be, not a problem, whatever, sure. And then immediately it was like, great, I'm going to flush the soap down the toilet. I was like, naturally, one would do that. Now I have to figure out like what to do with this. So I felt like that was really like a very surprising thing in a good way. I think the other one was when Romana actually did say that they shivered from fear. That was like, I wasn't like the way that we had sort of decided we were going to use that mechanic was that you could decide if like, I would ask you the question and you would decide if you were actually shivering from fear or not, because some people really don't want to experience that level of trauma, and that's fine. But Romana said, yes, I'm shivering from fear. And then like, we went there in this like creepy children narrative. And then I think that caused them to shatter. And I think that was really surprising to me too, just like how graphic that description got, and then it leading to shattering, because I don't keep track of what anybody's where anybody's trauma is at any given point in time. So I was like, oh no, oh crap, you actually did shatter. Okay, well I guess that is how the game is played. But I was also like, ooh, oopsie. And then of course they had to like go shortly after that, so they weren't able to like help us really shape the world, which was unfortunate. But I think those were like the two big surprising moments of the game was the mother shivering from fear and the Animus throwing the soap in the toilet.
Yeah. Getting shattered definitely surprised me. It like completely shocked me. When Meeks talked about the idea of getting shattered, I was like, oh, definitely not going to happen to any of us. And then when it happened to me, I was like, oh, wow, I really played fast and loose. And like now I am completely shattered. I like couldn't believe it was happening, and it was deeply disorienting.
Yeah, that shivering, I remember that shivering from fear moment too. And because it happened so late in the game, but it was so interesting. I was like, I regretted that none of us had tried it earlier. You know, I was like, oh, that was a more interesting move than we thought it would be, I think. And then it happened. And yeah, that was cool.
What I remember with the shivering from fear moment is that they had rolled across the room away from their computer. That's what I remember, was that they were on the other side of the room. And so they were this tiny little shape in their computer screen. And I said, are you shivering from fear, mother? And they were like, yes, I am. Okay, here we go.
Not necessarily surprise or shock, but just I think the most interesting moment where we actually were kind of batting heads and like having to really navigate the most. Like the first few rooms, we were kind of getting our feel for each other. But when we encountered the ghost kids, that got weird. And we were all like, hey, no, do not. And everyone was just against each other. Like, I'm going to touch it. Like, no, don't do it. I'm going to do it. It's just like, do not.
I remember being really surprised at how when the Virgin called out for help and help came, and I was just like trying to navigate that moment, and I was just shocked that there was no help. And also just how it resolved itself so neatly, I felt. And then the other thing that was a jump scare for me was when we were in the taxidermy room and there was a dog that looked like the dog that we had before. And I was like, is this going to go there? And it didn't, but it was a jump scare. I was like, not our dog. And then Meeks was like, of course it's not. It's just a dog. I was like, oh God.
I really enjoyed that bait and switch.
Meeks just has the best poker face. Like, with every decision, you would just be like, excellent, okay. I was like, oh no, what is going to happen?
It was straight up just that meme of like, oh, anyway.
Yeah. And that first time, I can't remember if it was you or someone else, Kory, but I think you said something about shivering, and Meeks was like, "Oh, are you shivering with fear?" And you said no. And Meeks was like, "Oh, good. I didn't think so yet."
Like, you what?
So I think my players in my regular game would also say something similar, that I am a huge dick about that kind of stuff. That like, I'm like, "Oh, is that what you're choosing to do?" And they're like, "Yes." I'm like, "Great, fantastic, great." And I don't say anything about it. And then they're just like, "What are you going to do to us?" I don't know. But it's a great, yeah, it's a biggest dickus. Thank you, Kory. Biggest dickus.
I'm curious also how the ending of the game felt. Because, like, we kind of know we do know what's coming. Of having to make all those kind of choices in sequence. How did that feel for you all?
Strangely, I was a little caught off guard by how ready everyone was to like throw Bluebeard under the bus and like distrust him. I don't know, maybe it was just the logic of how I was playing the mother, and I was very much thinking from the point of view of like, I will do anything to save myself and maintain some sort of secure position. And the mindset that I had as the mother was like, security means having husband, having house. And it was really interesting for me because I had this like very strong desire to constantly ignore red flags, and everybody else was just like, no, there are flags waving in the air. And so that wasn't the reaction that I thought I would have. And that was kind of interesting to get caught off guard for.
It ended too soon. I'm saying it for everybody. It ended too soon. We had way too much, just like, not for you, Meeks, not against you, but also just like, it was just, we were on a single episode, but I was just like, what? No. Like, I want control over this. Okay, now we gotta live with this motherfucker. I still have some things I want to air out, whether it be letting the rooms open to let the demons out, but also like, we have to talk, sir, about your interior decoration choices, and also like, when was the last time you cleaned out your closets? I don't know, 25 years ago? We should talk about that. There's some dust and I am not okay.
I really relate to the bathroom scene of just like having too many lotions that like my ex left at my house and just being like, I don't know what to do with this.
All right, fuck the soap. I need a 3-in-1. I'm over this shit.
It's interesting that's the one that ended up happening, because I think that when you choose the faithful outcome, there are still two possible outcomes, and y'all ended up with the and I put this in heavy quotation marks, the happier of the two. And even still, it doesn't feel, every single time I've run through an end scenario, it never feels like it's the right one, and it never feels good, is what is sort of what I've noticed about those questions, is that it does remove all of your agency even more than during the game, but like, it doesn't leave any room for you to confront anybody about anything. It's just like, how are you living with this? Not well. It's like the answer.
It would have been nice, actually, with some of these moments to almost have like not necessarily debriefing, but like, how do you handle your trauma from this room before moving on to the next one? It would have been nice to be like, okay, let's unpack some of this stuff, and now that we have these things in order, how do we go about the next one? Instead, we were just like, all right, on to the next one.
Yeah, I think for a couple of the rooms there was a clever mechanism of like having to go from one to the other. Like, you had to go get cleaned up in the bathroom. Like, if something drives you to another room, rather than just being like, ooh, what room next? And there's, how do you take the time to be like, all right, can we talk about this blood that's on me right now? Or like, can I just go wash it off and get on to the next thing?
It also blows my mind that the rooms are all super spooky, scary skeletons, and then the hallway is just like, I'm swimming in a what?
There's actually just elevator
hell?
Music playing
This
in the
is
lobby.
somebody in The Sims that was just like the hallways. No, I'm not using that. But then every room, rosebud, exclamation points, done. What?
Well, and I do remember there's like a specific example in the book about a ghost chasing the bride down a hallway. And I was like, but you don't set up the game to really work that way. So I was curious about that too, because I suppose like in between rooms, it's possible for the bride to be like, I want to go talk to the waitstaff to feel like to see if I can get to the bottom of this, right? Like there's a possibility of doing that. But then I think as the groundskeeper, your job is to say, oh, of course you have total agency, and then be like, you're now in front of a door. Like, so I think it's interesting that that's the way the game works. Or you would try to put somebody in that hallway that they could talk to, but that person would of course be equally unhelpful.
Yeah. Or it's like, I want to go talk to the wait staff. Okay, and so now you're at the door to the servants' quarters. Yeah, and like turn that into a room, kind of.
It was very much like, you remember Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix when they're in the Ministry of Magic and they're in that little area with all the spinning doors? Like, there's no other option? Just doors? What? Who built this?
Players, do you have any questions, burning or otherwise, that you want to ask Meaks?
Can we do it again?
I just want to know what rooms we didn't get to go to.
Yes, I want to know that too.
Without giving too much away, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Give it all away. We're done.
I did make one room that I really sad we didn't get to go to, which was like a dance room, like a dance studio. And there was going to be on the wall something that I found in my research called a foot stretcher, which is like, I guess if you were a ballerina, like it's like a very gross looking wooden, oddly shaped thing. And so I thought that would be a fun room. And for each of the rooms, I did write what I kind of like a very, very like 2 sentences. This is what I think happened in that room. So that's sort of what was driving me. And I think for that room, I was like, I think I said something to the effect of, it was a mother-daughter story, and that there was a chair in the room that didn't belong, and that was the chair that Bluebeard would sit in while he watched this mother beat her child, essentially. We didn't get to that room, but I was very interested about the foot stretcher. I was like, how can I make that really, really creepy?
I just Googled that, and I'm really distressed that it's a thing that you can, like, buy today.
That's...
Yeah.
They're common in a lot of ballet studios still.
Conversely, although of course we can always go back, I was also curious, Meeks, if you had any questions that you wanted to ask your players at the end of this process.
I mean, mostly I was just so tickled by, again, like I said, I wrote like a 2-sentence description of what I thought happened in every room just to help myself, like give you clues. And it was never, what you came up with was never what I wrote, which was amazing every single time. And I think like, we're all like theater people too. So it's one of those things where it's like, of course, that's what happens. Like you're going to give people the bare bones of a thing, and dramaturgically, we're going to shove those things together in the way that makes most sense for us. But so I don't think I have any questions left. I just I always wanted to know what story was going to be constructed out of the breadcrumbs that I left for you in every room. That was what was really enjoyable for me. And a lot of times what you came up with was better than what I had, just so that we're very clear.
For asking for Gina and Haleh, like, I don't know about you two, but I kind of had a specific, like, I want to do these certain things. And after, like, our first kind of game test play, I was like, okay, I know I'm going to target these certain types of situations. Did either of you have, like, initiatives that you had premeditated or anything? Or, like, just from reading, like, Ro and myself and each other?
I didn't. I think partly too because I've only played D&D, so I was sort of like really. My plan or my like thought was like I kind of just want to experience this and see what this version of a game is like. But that said, like I was happy to be the Animus. I mean, even in my other D&D game, like I'm a decisive character, and I sort of also approached. I was drawn to that character when we in session 0, and then sort of shaped what I was doing around like building that character. But beyond that and just sort of knowing who the character was, like I was just like, let's find out what happens. And like, what is it like to, not that Kory, not that I'm the like troll in my D&D group, but I absolutely am the one who's like, you all are fucking stupid. Like, can we just like stay on track here, please? We have to kill the thing. Like, let's go. So, it felt very like comfortable in that world. But it was interesting to have to, I was just sort of excited again to see how the mechanics of a game and as a character, what that would mean to be forced to collaborate with in so many ways, my teammates, because I literally can't do anything.
Yeah. And I definitely didn't have, I didn't know how to play. I was still like second guessing myself as I entered into the game, which was all from me and literally not from anybody else, because Meaks kept being like, you literally can't do it wrong. But I was like, I can do it wrong and I will. But that was my biggest fear. But I definitely did want to I knew I wanted to be the Virgin, because I find that archetype so interesting. And I knew that the Virgin was going to be super contrary to everything. And I also felt like she had a very clear goal. Like there was no way in my mind I could ever see the Virgin going against Bluebeard. And I find her like that archetype so fascinating, because I feel like that's something, there's so much toxicity and like I feel like goodness is associated with the archetype of the Virgin and like what that means, and heading into that, and like innocence and naivety. And I just find that so fascinating and so scary as just like a person. It's like that thing that I knew that I wanted to really be able to like double down into that. So I had so much fun when I knew that I was irritating everybody in the room by like still being like, no, I'm gonna go hard for this person that Gina knows is a murderer, but like the Virgin will never not think that he's a good person. So it was really fun to like scramble to find all of that stuff. And it was like really, I don't know, that's the one thing I knew I was gonna do. Virgin was going to agree with and find loyalty in Bluebeard no matter what.
Which is why it was so, I think, really amazing when you did turn on him. I think there was one room, right? There was one room. It was the room that the servant got that like tried to sexually assault you came into. And that was the one room where you were like, well, obviously there's something not right here. And like, I thought that was so gratifying as a watcher of the game as well as a player of the game, to see like the Virgin come to that. And of course, immediately reversed it in the next room. But it was great to see you like take that journey personally.
Amazing. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say before we go?
More gameplay. Let's do the thing. More, please. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm always very happy when that's the feedback after that's the response after one of these podcast games.
Bluebeard's Bride evolves into American Horror Story Coven.
Dungeons & Drominers is produced by Todd, Backus, Percival, Hornak, and Nicholas Orvis, and it's mixed and edited by Anthony Sertel Dean. Our Bluebeard's Bride game features Meaks Meaker as the Groundskeeper, Gina Femia as the Virgin, Haleh Roshan as the Animus, Kory Flores as the Witch, and Romana Isabella as the Mother. Bluebeard's Bride was written by Strix Beltrán, Marissa Kelly, and Sarah Doom, and published by Magpie Games. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at DNDramaNerds. Check out cast bios on our website, dungeonsanddramanerds.com, and tune in next week for another episode of Dungeons and Drama Nerds.